In the relentless crucible of war, where each day teeters precariously between life and death, where the line between fear and courage is so thin it can vanish with the crack of a gunshot, leadership is often revealed not in the bluster of rank, but in the quiet, steadfast actions of those who refuse to yield when chaos surrounds them. This is a story that begins with a moment of humiliation, a moment that could have shattered a spirit, yet instead ignited a force far stronger than anyone could have anticipated. A story of a woman, a US Army nurse, whose resolve and humanity would come to redefine courage for every soldier who witnessed her unwavering commitment. On a cold morning in Afghanistan, where the sun struggled to pierce through the dense clouds over rugged mountains and dusty valleys, a platoon of soldiers prepared for yet another day in a theater where survival was never guaranteed. Among them was Captain Christine Campus, a combat flight nurse whose presence was met with skepticism by some of the men who had only known battlefield bravery in terms of guns, grenades, and strategy. Despite her extensive training and years of experience tending to the wounded in conditions that would break many, she found herself publicly ridiculed by a senior officer, confident in his authority, who questioned her value in the field, casting doubt on her capabilities and, by extension, her very worth. The words, sharp and dismissive, were meant to belittle her in front of the soldiers, a calculated display to assert control, but instead they set the stage for a revelation that no one present would ever forget. The soldiers, many of whom had already seen her in action, exchanged fleeting glances, the kind that silently acknowledged both their discomfort at the injustice and the quiet truth they had already recognized, that her skill, her dedication, and her composure under pressure were unparalleled. Yet at that moment, caught between respect for her professionalism and the social hierarchy enforced by rank, they said nothing. They watched as she absorbed the insult with a calm that masked the storm of emotion she undoubtedly felt, understanding even then, instinctively, that true strength does not always announce itself with words or bravado. In the days that followed, her actions spoke louder than the words ever could. She moved among the wounded with unwavering precision, tending to injuries that would have daunted the strongest, offering encouragement to men who had seen too much death and never allowing the insult to define her. Every gesture, every careful assessment of a soldier's condition, every quiet word of reassurance became a testament to the power of composure, empathy, and relentless courage. Slowly, the soldiers began to recognize something profound, that leadership was not conferred by rank alone, but earned through action, through the willingness to place oneself in harm's way, not for glory, but for the survival of others. Captain Campus's presence became a lifeline, her calm a stabilizing force in a world dominated by unpredictability and fear. It became increasingly clear that while authority could be claimed by title, it could only be proven through deeds. And in the tense, high-stakes environment of war, deeds mattered far more than words. She embodied a principle that resonates universally, that courage, compassion, and integrity are the true markers of a hero. And sometimes the person underestimated by everyone is the very one who can change the outcome of an entire mission, the one who can save lives against impossible odds. If you want to witness the full story of how one nurse, dismissed and ridiculed, became the linchpin of survival for an entire platoon, make sure to subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell, and share this story with anyone who needs to be reminded that real heroes are often the ones who act quietly, selflessly, and with unwavering courage when it matters most. The morning had begun like any other in the unforgiving terrain of Afghanistan, where jagged mountains carved shadows across valleys dusted with sand and the remnants of previous skirmishes, where every sunrise carried with it the oppressive knowledge that danger could emerge from the smallest movement, the faintest sound, or the blink of an enemy's eye. Among the US soldiers stationed in this volatile region was Captain Christine Campus, a combat flight nurse whose calm and unwavering expertise had already saved countless lives, though many of the soldiers had yet to understand the depth of her capabilities. Her presence, uniformed yet unarmed in the traditional sense, drew subtle skepticism from some members of the platoon, conditioned to measure worth in bullets fired and missions survived, rather than in the quiet, precise skill of tending to the wounded under fire. It was during a routine briefing held in the dust-choked confines of an improvised command post that the incident occurred. A senior officer, confident in his authority and accustomed to being the center of attention, decided to publicly ridicule Captain Campus in front of the platoon. His voice, sharp with condescension, carried a sneer that echoed across the small, tense space, questioning her abilities, mocking her training, and dismissing her presence as inconsequential to the mission at hand. "What use are you out here, Captain?" he jeered, his eyes scanning the soldiers as if expecting them to agree. "Maybe stick to the base and let the real fighters handle the field." The words struck like a physical blow. Some of the soldiers looked away, unsure of whether to intervene, torn between loyalty to the chain of command and recognition of the injustice they were witnessing. Others, hardened by the experience of combat, felt a quiet indignation stirring in their chests. They had seen Captain Campus act under pressure, witnessed her skill in treating injuries that seemed unsurvivable, observed her steady hand as she stabilized wounded soldiers while chaos raged around them. Yet here, in front of everyone, her authority and competence were dismissed with the ease of a practiced insult. But Captain Campus did not react with anger, nor did she try to verbally defend herself. She remained composed, her expression calm, her posture resolute, signaling in the subtlest of ways that her worth was not determined by the narrow view of a single officer. The silence that followed her initial restraint was almost deafening, yet it was charged with an unspoken tension. The soldiers watched, their admiration for her quiet fortitude beginning to outweigh the authority of the man who had so carelessly belittled her. In that moment, an invisible shift began to occur, one that would later prove pivotal. Respect was quietly migrating from the rank to the deed, from the uniform to the heart that beat with courage and compassion in the face of ridicule. Over the next few hours, as the soldiers prepared for patrol, the consequences of the officer's mockery became increasingly evident, not in any overt confrontation, but in the way Captain Campus carried herself. She moved with purposeful grace, checking equipment, ensuring medical supplies were secure, reviewing evacuation protocols, and quietly instructing medics on the most efficient ways to tend to battlefield injuries. Every action, executed with precision and calm authority, spoke volumes. It was a silent retort that no words of derision could undermine. The soldiers began to murmur among themselves, sharing observations of her competence. "She handled that last casualty better than half the medics we've seen," one whispered. Another added, "And she stayed calm while the bullets were flying. No hesitation, nothing panicked, not like some officers we've seen." The initial humiliation, intended to diminish her credibility, inadvertently set the stage for its complete reversal. What had been intended as a moment of shame became the catalyst for recognition, as the soldiers realized that leadership, real leadership, was not always about loud commands or aggressive posturing. It was about unwavering presence, decisive action, and the courage to place oneself at the center of danger for the sake of others. As the day progressed, Captain Campus continued her meticulous attention to detail, overseeing the loading of vehicles, preparing medevac protocols, and giving calm instructions during simulated drills designed to test the platoon's readiness. The soldiers' respect for her grew steadily, subtly, like a fire smoldering under ash, unseen at first but undeniable in its warmth and light. Even those who had initially doubted her abilities could not ignore the competence she displayed, nor could they dismiss the quiet authority that emanated from someone whose worth had never relied on rank alone. By evening, the impact of that morning's ridicule had been entirely transformed. The soldiers no longer saw her as someone to be questioned or dismissed. They saw a woman whose skill, courage, and composure under pressure had earned their trust and admiration. And while the officer who had mocked her remained in title above her, his authority had begun to erode in the eyes of those who mattered most. For in the crucible of war, it was deeds, not words, that proved worth. And Captain Campus had demonstrated time and again that she was more than capable of guiding, protecting, and inspiring those around her. In that way, the humiliation intended to diminish her became the very moment that revealed her unshakable character, setting in motion a chain of events that would ultimately allow her to rise as a true leader when the platoon faced a situation far more dire than anyone could have anticipated. The lesson was clear. Strength is not measured by rank or rhetoric, but by courage, competence, and the willingness to act decisively when lives hang in the balance. The days following the officer's public ridicule could have broken anyone else. In the unforgiving heat of Afghanistan, where every patrol carried the ever-present specter of ambush, the demands on soldiers and medics alike were relentless. Yet Captain Christine Campus carried herself with a quiet, resolute strength, as if the scorn of that morning had not penetrated her resolve at all. Instead of faltering, she channeled every ounce of energy into her work, proving that her value was measured not by others' perceptions, but by actions and outcomes, by lives saved and spirits bolstered under impossible conditions. From the first light of dawn, she moved among the wounded with meticulous precision. Her hands, steady and confident, assessed injuries that ranged from minor shrapnel wounds to critical trauma, her knowledge of anatomy, triage and emergency procedures, turning chaos into order. She spoke in calm, measured tones, offering reassurance with words that carried weight because they were backed by unwavering competence. "You're going to make it," she would say to a soldier whose face betrayed terror and pain. "Just hold on. I've got you." And in those moments, fear subsided, replaced by trust. A trust she had earned silently, deliberately, through consistency and care rather than through authority or rank. Even as the soldiers observed her tending to others, they began to notice something more profound. She never sought recognition. She never reminded anyone of the skills she possessed, the hours of training she had endured, or the lives she had already saved. Her commitment was selfless, almost invisible in its humility, yet undeniably potent in its impact. It was this unyielding dedication that gradually reshaped the soldiers' understanding of leadership and strength. They realized that the woman they had once seen as delicate or inconsequential was the glue holding their platoon together in ways they had never imagined. As patrols grew longer and the dangers more unpredictable, Captain Campus's resolve never wavered. She anticipated complications before they arose, instructed medics on preventative measures, and ensured that every soldier understood evacuation protocols. Her presence became both practical and psychological. The wounded felt safer, the healthy felt reassured, and the entire platoon began to operate with a cohesion they had previously lacked. Even those who had silently doubted her ability to contribute in the field began to see her not as a subordinate, but as a vital source of guidance and strength. There was one moment that underscored this transformation. During a particularly grueling patrol, a young private collapsed from heat exhaustion, barely conscious, sweating profusely, and on the verge of a fatal seizure. Captain Campus, already exhausted from hours of attending to other injuries, knelt beside him without hesitation. Her hands worked methodically, cooling his body, monitoring his vitals, and speaking in a calm, steady voice that cut through panic. The private clung to her words and presence as if they were a lifeline, and the soldiers around them watched in silent awe. In that instant, they recognized the undeniable truth. Her courage, her expertise, and her care were as critical to their survival as any weapon or tactical maneuver. Over time, this recognition spread throughout the platoon. They began to share quiet acknowledgements, subtle nods of respect, and hushed comments highlighting her competence. "She's got nerves of steel," one murmured. "I wouldn't want anyone else watching my back," said another. The officer who had mocked her may have commanded attention, but it was Captain Campus who commanded loyalty, not through intimidation, but through the demonstration of unwavering dedication, empathy, and intelligence. Her commitment went beyond immediate medical care. She took the time to learn each soldier's name, to understand their fears and motivations, and to encourage them not just physically, but emotionally. In moments of despair, when soldiers questioned their purpose, when the weight of constant danger threatened to break their spirits, Captain Campus provided quiet words of reassurance, reminders of the lives they were fighting to protect, and the belief that together they could endure and overcome any challenge. This was leadership in its purest form, not a title, not a rank, not a badge, but the consistent choice to act with courage, compassion, and clarity in circumstances where hesitation could mean death. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the soldier's allegiance shifted. The officer who had ridiculed her may have held nominal authority, but the platoon's respect, their trust, and ultimately their willingness to follow decisive direction belonged entirely to Captain Campus. Her quiet defiance of insult and steadfast commitment to duty had become a lesson in what it truly means to lead, by example, by courage, and by unwavering dedication to the lives of others. Even when exhaustion threatened to overtake her, she pressed on, knowing that her presence made the difference between life and death. The soldiers began to operate differently as a result, coordinating more effectively, taking fewer unnecessary risks, and recognizing the value of a leader who prioritized their safety above ego, above pride, and above personal recognition. What had begun as a subtle shift in perception blossomed into a profound acknowledgement. She was indispensable, a cornerstone of survival in a theater where every decision mattered and every moment carried consequences. By the end of the patrol, the transformation was complete. Captain Campus had not only saved lives through her medical expertise, but had also inspired trust, loyalty, and admiration in the very men who had once doubted her. Through steadfast dedication, quiet strength, and unshakable resolve, she had redefined the meaning of leadership in the eyes of those who mattered most. The soldiers on the front lines, fighting not just for survival, but for one another. The sun had barely risen over the jagged Afghan mountains when the platoon found itself thrust into a situation that would test every ounce of their training, courage, and resilience. An ambush, sudden and ferocious, erupted from hidden positions among the rocky terrain, sending gunfire ripping through the air and throwing the soldiers into a chaos that no drill could have fully prepared them for. The ground trembled with the weight of their panic. The cries of the wounded pierced the smoke-filled air, and the officer who had ridiculed Captain Christine Campus earlier now stood frozen, uncertain and paralyzed, his authority meaningless amidst the sheer terror of the moment. It was in that instant, amid the storm of confusion, that Captain Campus's true leadership emerged, not announced with words, but asserted through action. She moved with swift precision, her eyes scanning the battlefield, assessing threats, injuries, and the positions of both her platoon and the enemy. Without hesitation, she directed medics to the most critically injured improvising triage zones where soldiers could receive immediate care despite the constant barrage of gunfire. Her voice, calm but firm, cut through panic like a beacon of clarity. "Get the wounded to cover, keep moving, we're not leaving anyone behind." Each command was executed with authority, not because of rank, but because every soldier instinctively understood that following her would maximize their chances of survival. The platoon, initially disoriented and fearful, began to respond. Under her guidance, they organized themselves into defensive positions, covering each other as they moved the injured to relative safety. Captain Campus worked tirelessly, sometimes dragging soldiers herself, sometimes coordinating medevac support, and always maintaining an unshakable calm that inspired the platoon to keep fighting even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Her actions were not about personal glory. They were about survival, about ensuring that every man and woman under her care had a chance to see another sunrise. Amidst the chaos, she demonstrated not only tactical acumen, but also extraordinary empathy. She knelt beside a young private who had been shot in the leg, talking to him softly as she applied a tourniquet and stabilized his vitals. "You're going to make it," she whispered, her hands steady despite the bullets whizzing past. "I've got you. Stay with me." That combination of medical skill, emotional reassurance, and fearless presence transformed fear into focus, despair into determination. Soldiers who had moments before questioned her capability now followed her every instruction without hesitation, placing their lives in her hands with absolute trust. The officer who had mocked her earlier tried to assert control, shouting orders that had lost all meaning in the face of her decisive action. For the first time, his authority counted for nothing. The platoon ignored his hesitation and rallied around Captain Campus, their respect and loyalty firmly established through her deeds in the heat of life-or-death combat. Every soldier understood, without being told, that the person truly leading them was not the one with the highest rank, but the one who acted with clarity, courage, and selfless commitment when it mattered most. Her leadership extended beyond immediate medical care. She orchestrated defensive maneuvers, repositioned the wounded to safer cover, and directed return fire in coordination with the combat-ready soldiers. Each decision was calculated, every movement purposeful, and despite the relentless pressure, she never lost composure. The platoon, witnessing her unwavering presence, found themselves moving with renewed cohesion, protecting each other, covering each other, and ultimately turning what could have been a disastrous ambush into a controlled engagement that minimized casualties. As the firefight dragged on, Captain Campus continued to demonstrate extraordinary endurance. Hours passed, bullets flew, and yet she remained at the center of the chaos, a stabilizing force, tirelessly attending to those in need and coordinating defensive efforts. Her example inspired every soldier to dig deeper, to fight smarter, and to prioritize their comrades' safety over their own fears. The wounded, who might have succumbed to shock or panic, were kept alive, not solely through medical intervention, but through the presence of someone whose courage refused to waver, even in the face of overwhelming danger. When reinforcements finally arrived and the ambush was quelled, the platoon regrouped, exhausted, battered, and shaken, but alive. The magnitude of what had occurred was clear. Every life saved during that critical moment had been directly influenced by Captain Campus's decisiveness, courage, and unwavering commitment to duty. In the aftermath, soldiers spoke in hushed tones about the woman who had taken command, whose presence had turned chaos into order, and whose actions had redefined their understanding of heroism. The officer who had mocked her earlier now faced a stark reality. His position of authority had been rendered secondary in the eyes of the platoon. It was not a question of disrespect, but of survival and recognition. Captain Campus had proven, in the most harrowing crucible imaginable, that leadership and valor are measured by deeds, not by rank, and that true heroes are those who act selflessly, decisively, and with unwavering courage when every second counts. By the end of that day, one undeniable truth had emerged. Captain Christine Campus was no longer merely a nurse, no longer simply a subordinate in the eyes of the platoon. She was their guide, their protector, and their beacon of hope amidst the darkness of war, a living testament to the fact that courage, competence, and compassion can redefine leadership and save lives in ways no title ever could. As the sun dipped low over the rugged Afghan landscape, casting long shadows across the dusty valley and the remnants of the day's chaos, the platoon found itself in a rare moment of quiet reflection. The firefight was over, the wounded stabilized, and the adrenaline that had driven every action now slowly ebbed, leaving behind the weight of exhaustion and the unspoken recognition of what had just occurred. In those moments, it became unmistakably clear to every soldier present that the woman they had once doubted, once seen as inexperienced or inconsequential, had become the linchpin of their survival, the embodiment of courage, competence, and selfless leadership. Captain Christine Campus, her uniform stained with sweat, dirt, and the evidence of relentless effort, moved quietly among the men, checking on the injured, offering a word of reassurance, and coordinating the remaining medevac efforts. Her demeanor was calm, her actions measured, and yet in her eyes burned the intensity of someone who had faced the crucible of combat and emerged not only unbroken, but revered. The soldiers who had witnessed her rise from being mocked to being the guiding force of the platoon could not help but feel a profound shift in their understanding of leadership. Rank, title, and traditional authority no longer dictated respect. The courage, decisiveness, and unwavering commitment she had demonstrated were the true currency of influence. The officer who had ridiculed her earlier sat apart, a shadow of uncertainty crossing his features. For the first time, he realized that authority alone could not compel loyalty or inspire action. The platoon's trust had shifted irrevocably, and he could do nothing to reclaim it. Every soldier had seen firsthand who truly kept them alive in the moments when panic threatened to consume them, and that knowledge could not be taken away. Captain Campus had transformed from a figure of quiet competence into the undeniable leader of the platoon, not by demanding obedience, but by earning it through courage, skill, and empathy. The soldiers themselves began to speak in hushed, reverent tones about her actions. One remarked on the calm precision with which she had stabilized the wounded under fire. Another noted how her strategic thinking had orchestrated their survival despite overwhelming odds. Yet another whispered about the quiet way she had lifted the spirits of those on the brink of despair, her words giving them strength when they felt all hope had vanished. In these conversations, her legacy began to take shape, not as a title in a report, nor as a medal on a uniform, but as the living proof that true leadership is measured in deeds, not designations. It was in this context that the soldiers began to call her not merely the nurse or Captain Campus, but something far more meaningful, their guide, their protector, their beacon. Her actions had rewritten the hierarchy of respect within the platoon, replacing superficial authority with demonstrated valor. The lesson was profound. Leadership is earned in moments of crisis, through decisions that save lives, through courage that inspires trust, and through selflessness that puts others above oneself. Captain Campus's example had transformed every soldier's understanding of what it means to lead, showing that heroism is not about recognition or ego, but about the relentless commitment to protect and guide others in the face of mortal danger. Even after the immediate danger had passed, her influence continued to resonate. The platoon operated with a new cohesion, their confidence rooted not just in their training, but in the knowledge that someone among them embodied the principles they now aspired to. They moved with coordination and trust, each action informed by the memory of her guidance under fire. Her leadership had created a ripple effect, strengthening their bonds, enhancing their performance, and instilling a profound sense of mutual reliance. By nightfall, it was clear that Captain Campus's legacy extended far beyond the mission that day. The soldiers who had once laughed at or underestimated her now revered her, carrying her example into every aspect of their work. Her courage and competence had not only saved lives, but had reshaped the very culture of the platoon, demonstrating that true authority is measured by respect earned through action, not by titles imposed by hierarchy. Even the officer who had mocked her earlier could no longer deny her impact. His authority had been eclipsed by the tangible, undeniable proof of her leadership in the field. In the broader context of military service, her story became a living testament to the principle that courage, integrity, and dedication are the foundations of true leadership. She demonstrated that even in the most harrowing circumstances, one individual's commitment to excellence and selflessness can inspire others, transform outcomes, and redefine the very meaning of heroism. Her actions illuminated the path for those around her, proving that real leaders do not need to demand respect. They earn it quietly, through deeds that resonate long after the moment has passed. Captain Christine Campus's legacy serves as a powerful reminder that heroism can manifest in unexpected ways, and that the people we might initially underestimate are sometimes the ones capable of extraordinary acts. She became a symbol not only for her platoon, but for anyone who witnesses courage under fire, showing that even amidst chaos and danger, one person's dedication can alter the course of countless lives. This story reminds us that true leadership is defined not by rank, medals, or recognition, but by the courage to act selflessly, the clarity to make critical decisions under pressure, and the compassion to inspire and protect those around you. Captain Campus went from being ridiculed to becoming the hero who saved her entire platoon, leaving an indelible mark on every life she touched. If this story inspired you, subscribe to our channel for more tales of real-life heroism and courage under fire, hit the notification bell so you never miss a story, and share this video to honor the unsung heroes whose actions change lives every day. Leave a comment below to tell us about someone in your life who has shown extraordinary courage. Let's celebrate the heroes among us together.